Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's Auxis Corporate Performance Series webinar. Is Microsoft's Azure Cloud right for my business? My name is Yazan Arroyo, and I'm the moderator for today's webinar. Today's webinar is presented by Auxis. Auxis is a very different consulting and outsourcing firm comprised of former industry professionals who don't act like traditional consultants. Offering a customized, real-world, results-oriented approach, we become ingrained in our clients' culture and vision and truly dedicated to their success. Our depth of experience allows us to operate under a very different leverage model and maintain a focus on customization, flexibility, and bottom-line results at a very competitive cost structure. Before we begin, let me remind all participants we welcome your questions. Please submit them in your webinar panel at any time. We'll address your questions at the conclusion of the webinar. And with that, I'll turn it over to our speaker, Michael. Michael?
Thank you, Aslan. I'm here today to talk about Microsoft Azure. Again, my name is Michael Flainer. I'll go over and start a little bit about the agenda. We'll talk about me and where I've been and what I've done. We'll talk about review Microsoft Azure and a brief background, and then we'll move into its killer features and benefits. We'll talk about best use cases, and then we'll talk about their marketplace, and then move on between compare Azure to AWS, its largest competitor, and offer a complimentary assessment, and then do some Q&A. With that, I've been in technology management for about 18 years. I've been in a very diverse background. 5 years, very fortunate to be with a Fortune 50 electronics giant, Motorola. 13 years with a mid-sized market research conglomerate. We did everything from the very bottom of the industry, from data collection all the way up to the very high end of very detailed analyzation and writing reports to Procter & Gamble, Mercedes, you name it, they were our customers. I was very fortunate to spend a few years at a very large insurance broker, publicly traded, and got to put together some very big initiatives for them, data centers, and rewriting some of their Sarbanes-Oxley guidelines. And then I've been very, very fortunate to be at Auxis for the past 2 years, a management consultant, dealing with being a service delivery manager and being on-site at clients, acting as a CIO or an IT executive, and at other clients acting as a liaison and mentor, as an advisor to other clients as well. I've utilized Six Sigma framework as well as IDLE 3 concepts. I've been responsible for hundreds of projects over the years during my career, and I'm very active in the CIO leadership network. And the three things that I always focus and try to deliver to my organizations that I deal with are three big things for me: is innovation, risk mitigation, and most importantly, cost controls. Now we'll talk a little bit about Microsoft Azure. It's very important to understand where a company has been so we can figure out where they're going to go. Microsoft Azure was actually founded in January of 2010, but they didn't really start billing and dealing with customers until February of 2010. When they initially started, and even to this day, they're focusing on the infrastructure as a service platform, the platform as a service. What does infrastructure as a service really mean? They actually have the keys. They deploy the infrastructure pieces, the servers, the RAM, the networking, the hard drives, all that other stuff for their clients. And you were able to make modifications to the operating system and put your data on there and everything else. They also, unlike some of their large competitors, also offer platform as a service. You can manage your websites or a few other things. You can do manage your SQL databases and not worry about the operating system that's already taking care of for you. I have heard Azure SQL as a managed service, but I also it's largely considered platform as a service as well. Go on to the next pieces. Major changes happened to the Azure's platform in 2012. They welcomed into their full the majority of the Linux distributions in the environment. They were no longer just a Microsoft-only shop. They started doing some of the biggest names they started supporting in the industry for the Linux platform. The one that is glaringly still left out of the environment is Red Hat, but we'll see what the future holds there. Well, what has Microsoft become? Well, Microsoft Azure currently defines himself as a cloud computing platform and infrastructure for building, deploying, managing application services through a global network of Microsoft-managed data centers. They offer both infrastructure, like they did from the beginning, they offer infrastructure as a service and platform as a services. Items of interest, extending on the premise of infrastructure to the Azure's cloud, many advantages. They have many advantages, like catastrophic failure is no longer an option if you're using a product like Azure's. Simple backups of key items like global catalog and are easily handled and stored long-term for very little cost. Numerous other niceties like self-service, password resets, and all kinds of other things that are somewhat difficult to deploy in the past are now just a click box away. I'm going to focus on the two biggest things. They have all these things down here where they talk about Internet of Things and information protection, and certainly a lot of these things are very important, but I think the two killer features are both hybrid cloud and virtualization and private cloud. This is, again, one of their killer features. Hybrid cloud is something that other providers just don't have. This is, for lack of a better term, this is the gateway drug for Microsoft. As you'll see shortly, Microsoft has made it very easy to dip your toes into this environment, and before you know it, you're splashing around and inviting your friends in. You have the ability to take your environment and move it from your local data center on premise from a bunch of different places that we'll talk about shortly. But that's the key thing, is the hybrid cloud, is they can take your stuff wherever it is and get it into their cloud, very little issue. They also go through and deal with, they have other benefits where you can actually extend out some of the key benefits of the software as a service platform. Like if you're currently using Office 365 or Exchange or SharePoint, it's easy to integrate your existing applications into the hybrid cloud through those platforms, both on-premise in the Microsoft Azure's platform and in the software as a service platform. So that's three things they can integrate into. It's pretty important that no other company is able to do that. You also get continual access to other products that are coming down the road and are recently launched. One that caught my eye that made a lot of sense to me was the Azure's AD conditional access. For example, when you could create a policy that specifies that all users in your North American sales group get seamless single sign-on access to Salesforce.com when they're accessing it inside of your corporate network. However, if they attempt to access something as important as Salesforce.com from a remote location like Starbucks, or they have to use multi-factor authentication, that really saves really important information from being hacked. You can easily get somebody's password, but you can't get their password on their phone as easily as you can just their password. You also have the ability to some of the other things that are coming out. They have is like the Azure's infrastructure as a service cost estimator, something one of your administrators can deploy and figure out and report back to the CFO of exactly what it would cost to take some workloads, whatever versions or whatever you really wanted, to figure out what it would cost on a monthly basis to move the workloads in a hybrid mode, both locally and in the cloud, and you can get a cost estimator for whatever you're looking at doing. Now, one of the most important pieces of their virtualization and private cloud platform, and this is an absolute game changer, is something called the Microsoft Migration Accelerator for Azure. What it really does is, I'll go back up a little bit. It's a product they purchased last year from a company called Image. I'm going to get a little technical here, but bear with me. The software was marketed in the U.S. and it was developed in India, a product called Scout. This uses continuous data protection for the people that are into backups. You'll understand what that is for backup and replication. The Scout feature that allows this is something called the host offload, which uses a software agent that protects the servers, but also actually allows them to move them somewhere else seamlessly. This opens up possibilities that simply weren't, that other companies are not using or that they don't have right now. It allows an extremely straightforward way to move servers into the Azure platform from your Microsoft environment that's in your current data center to Hyper-V, to physical servers, and to Linux servers that are supported anywhere in your infrastructure, to be able to Linux supporters, servers that are actually supported by the Azure's platform, which is the majority of them. But here's the killer. You can also take AWS, install this on your AWS servers and move them from AWS to Microsoft Azure. I'm going to say that again. You can take your AWS platform and move it into the Azures for backup purposes, for redundancy, anything else. That's, until recently, that's not really been an option for many cloud provider. It's, again, a big game changer. So that enables other things to happen, like the usage of the Microsoft Azure's premium storage, something relatively new for the environment, but it allows you to do some pretty cool stuff with your infrastructure as a service and your platform as a service workloads. You can take up to 32 gigs of storage on a VM or 50,000 IOPS, and I'm going to let that settle in. 50,000 IOPS for a local SAN is well into the 6 figures just to get that type of shelf in your building. And that's before you have to make that decision to get that in there. Why is that important, that this is available? Using the hybrid model and the premium storage model, you can actually shift some of your intensive challenges from your physical locations or AWS or any other platform. You can shift them from your local on-premise data center into Azure's for a short period of time if you wanted to do some modeling. For instance, let's say you're working on a product or something that requires a tremendous amount of I/O. At least you think you do. You can deploy that workload into the cloud, and without any huge outlay of capital expenditures, you can figure out if the additional I/Os are going to be worth it for you. That's. I've got many clients that have had to do this before, and it's worked out for them, but they've actually had to make a huge capital investment. You can answer the tough question. Is drastically increasing I/O worth it to your application? Well, you can move it to the data center and figure it out and put it on the super fast disks without actually the hassle of getting extreme expensive solid state shelves for your SAN. And then if you do get it there, the next question is, would you rather keep it on the OpEx on a monthly basis that you can get rid of at any time, or you're going to have to make that extremely expensive capital investment? What do you do going forward? Well, the answer is you get to determine that yourself. Some of the scenarios that work very well with this are multi-year business intelligence projects that happen. Sometimes they take hours or days, dozens of hours or days to be able to complete. I know I have some of my clients that go through those challenges right now. We did spend a tremendous amount of capital that drastically reduced those things that are happening. It's not always RAM and CPU that need to be taken care of. It's a lot of times it's disk I/O. So you have the ability to use the premium storage in a short-term fashion to figure out if it's right for you. Moving on to some of the Microsoft Azure's best case scenarios. Again, as with all the best case scenarios, hybrid is truly the gateway to get you to the best case scenarios. Many countries require data that affects them or their citizens to be kept in country. You can satisfy these requirements by storing subsets of your data in those countries. Microsoft Azure has data centers in all the major financial capitals of the world and is growing every day, much like its largest competitor, Amazon. And also, if you've ever had to deal with a CDN like Akamai, you can appreciate the time and energy and effort that goes into a CDN network. You can easily set that up with Microsoft Azure. It's something that at significantly discount versus Akamai. Again, hybrid is the gateway for all of the best case scenarios. Business continuity and disaster recovery. If you were working in South Florida in 2004, you need no introduction as to the value of a solid business continuity and disaster recovery plan. Back then, few companies had a rock-solid one. Shortly after that, most did migrate to a decent backup disaster recovery solution, some with multiple data centers deployed. If you needed to start over today, you can do all of the same things, multiple data centers, for pennies on the dollar compared to redundant physical locations, at least for the x86 platforms and storage. Call centers are a different story. I imagine they'll be solved in the next few years, but today they're not. Moving on to unpredictable loads, you can't really predict when things go viral. Suddenly, a celebrity is seen in your company's product. It reaches Twitter. For a brief time, things could be fine until your servers crash due to load. You can scale with Azure's. Not as well as the industry leader in AWS, but they don't have the ability to get you from the hybrid model into the cloud. It's all or nothing with them. Progress is being made on these fronts. Another scenario I'd like to talk about is consequences of finite resources. Has this happened before to you? Accounting is running a massive monthly process, but you need an age receivable and sales needs to run numbers for commissions. I know this has happened in companies that I've had to deal with, only to find that these processes are running very slow because they're all using services that are on constraint. They're already maxed out, but they can't go any faster. You can scale with you can actually handle unpredictable loads using Azure's. High scale. Much like unpredictable loads, you can ramp up and change disk I/O ops to maximum, spin up thousands of servers across data centers around the world very quickly. Again, location, if you needed to be wherever your customers are, say you're launching a product in Germany, you can put them there. If you need quantity, as many as you can deploy, and the specs that you wanted to put. If you wanted certain amounts of disk storage at different IOPS levels with the amount of RAM or whatever, all that's easily done from a single person that's in your team, or a partner like Auxis can set that up for you. Fairly straightforward. And again, back to storage. Again, another best case for Azure. The sky's the limit here. All of these items require a great deal of CapEx to procure and OpEx when you actually have to maintain them on premise. I know because I've been doing this for a very long time. I've spent 7 figures on storage across multiple organizations. We got pretty good I/O and highly available, long-term archiving taken care of. But if I had to do it all over again, I would go with a product like this. You take out so many headaches, and you're only worried about OpEx that you can cut off at any time. You can change at any time. If your long-term archiving needs change, guess what? You still are stuck with that physical equipment. All you have to do is delete it from Azure, and then the billing stops. That's pretty nice. Moving on to Microsoft Azure's Marketplace. They have 6 different categories for the marketplace. I'm naturally drawn to some of the Active Directory pieces because of some of the things that they can do, and I was fairly excited about machine learning, but we'll talk about those individually. The Microsoft, the virtual machines category is maintained by, as you can well imagine, you can pretty much get every conceivable pre-configured virtual machine from Microsoft that's been obviously optimized to run inside of Azure. The full suite, of course. You got SQL 2014, 2012, Dynamics, Windows, SharePoint. Pick a product. It's going to be there available for you, and it's fairly simple to deploy. I know that I've done it myself, and if I can do it, anybody can do it. Also, many partners that have certified their products both on Windows and Linux. You got Oracle, SAP, Barracuda, AlertLogic, all tweaked for maximum performance inside of Azure. and then hundreds of open source community maintained distributions like Drupal, GitLab, JBoss, Sugar CRM, Nagios, all completely configured and for the best running environment for you. Data services, you can find a wide variety of data including demographics, environmental, financial, retail, sports. You can use this data inside your Microsoft Office software, your business intelligence tools, and your very own custom app. You can put them in your very own custom applications. Categories range from consumer goods and distribution to weather and forecast to health and wellness, Dun & Bradstreet for the non-financial side, tons and tons of government records. LexisNexis has a bunch of stuff built out as well. Pretty powerful access to data that you can run on your business intelligence tools. The web applications are fairly rich. You can explore and install popular open source community web applications ranging from blog engines, photo galleries, e-commerce solutions. You can build out fairly dynamic web applications in just a few minutes using these ready applications like Tomcat and use some of the other stuff like BugNet. Moving on to the application services, they have a really deep and innovative way to deal with some of these things. You can discover, purchase, provision data services from Microsoft partners. These services can be combined with Azure services from Microsoft to build powerful cloud solutions. You can provision these through the store, and you manage them through the portal, and the services will build on a single bill from Microsoft. So if you wanted to add alert logic for some internal stuff, you wanted to do to look at some of your cloud environment for breaches or anything else you wanted to do, if there was memory usage, you needed to spawn something, you would know. You can use some of the DB applications, Melissa Data IP Check. Lots of robust solutions, more than I can cover ever. The Active Directory applications. You can configure single sign-on to many different software as a solution applications like Citrix and the ones that are listed here. It's pretty powerful. If you've ever tried to deal with some of these things, they're pretty demanding. They're difficult to get them linked in back to get them working, like Google App, having a single sign-on application is very difficult. Salesforce, ServiceNow, Concur, all these are great things and great to use. It's just nicer if you have a single password that you can actually deal with all of these different companies. So one of the things you can do is one of their applications. There's again tons of others. I mentioned some others before, like the conditional access one, but there's more and more and more and more every day. Machine learning is such a deep area. It's I can see why. I can see in the next few years this is going to be fairly powerful. You don't need to be a data scientist to take advantage of some of these machine learning tools. You bring your own data and you leverage a variety of these machine learning language services or machine learning services, such as forecasting, product recommendations, sentiment analysis. It's just you take your data and you put it in there and you read the tutorials and you can get some online help, and it actually does some pretty incredible business intelligence tool things that you don't typically would have access to without being part of a cloud provider. So I'm moving on to the differences between comparing and contrasting Microsoft Azure and AWS. They compete directly in two separate offerings. Microsoft's in a few more than AWS. Microsoft's in a few more than AWS is, but in both, by the way, in both categories, AWS is leading, both in cloud infrastructure as a service and as the public cloud's storage services. I'll move on to Amazon strengths or similarities. Sorry. They both offer infrastructure as a service. They both have extensive marketplaces, of course. They have license mobility. What does that really mean? If you have licenses from Microsoft or IBM or anything else that you need to license yourself, you can actually put those in to the portal, because they typically sell you the licenses, whether it be SAP or somebody else or Microsoft. You can bring your licenses and only pay for what you're actually using on the machine, the infrastructure, and not the actual licenses. So that's a good thing. Both have local redundancy, regional, global redundancy options, something you would expect for companies of these calibers. The things that they deal with on a regular basis, licensing and redundancy, is almost an afterthought. Moving on to Amazon strengths. They're a leader in these categories: automation, chef recipes. I'll move back to my example about the bursting. Let's say a retailer gets a prize overnight by popularity of a product it sells, just went viral. Normally this will bring down web servers and crash, impact the back-end database it was hosting. If properly configured, it can burst even quicker than the Azure's platform and rapidly scale in locations around the world. This is such a strength. They're the best at it. At scaling. Their chef recipes are fantastic. They're elastic, they're scalable. Their rule sets are like nobody else's. They do have a slightly more extensive marketplace. That is starting to slip. Actually, it has slipped. They do have more physical locations targeted foreign governments to keep their data domestic. Right now they do have a few more security options, and the biggest thing of all these, in my opinion, is their access currently to Red Hat. That's really important for them. Moving on to Microsoft. In a word, hybrid is their largest single. Hybrid deployment integration is their largest single thing. The ability to go through, take anything on-prem or in AWS or another cloud provider for that matter, and deploy them and move them from those workloads to Azure's is the Trojan horse that is going to get them where they need to be. You can rapidly deploy the Microsoft ecosystem. All aspects of support they are the best rated cloud provider, and they have the best service level agreements of any cloud provider. Again, you can get your workloads quickly to the cloud with their new innovative tools. If you're, yep, and you can get workloads to AWS to Azure's. Overall thoughts on Microsoft versus Azure's. They're both fantastic products. I think they, as Gartner has pointed out, they are the cream of the crop, and they're in infrastructure as a service and the cloud storage pieces. Nobody's even close to those two. I see them duking it out over the next 3 to 4 years. But I also see it going in slightly different directions. I mean, they're focusing on different things. Microsoft is going to continue to go through and actually focus on their areas where they can leverage they can actually write their software to tailor to their AWS platform, whereas AWS or Amazon has to rely on all these third parties to get where they need to be. So, who would I recommend? Well, that would make, I wouldn't recommend either one of them over the other, but I would actually go through and actually talk to the business that was actually looking at it and interview them and figure out exactly what they need before I would give them a recommendation. Again, both of these companies are fantastic. Could likely go wrong with either one of them, but always take the time to personally understand or to deeply understand what's right for your organization before you make an important move like this. Although you can get away with Microsoft in the short term and just delete the product if you don't like it. But anyway, recapping Azure's, Microsoft Azure. They are, the infrastructure as a service platform, and the platform as a service platform is they're both very strong product offerings. They compete directly in the infrastructure with AWS. There's really the two most dominant players. And the question is it right? There's a couple questions you want to ask yourself if it's right for you. A lot of these have to do with financial questions. Are you coming off a hardware lease? Does your CFO really into operating expenses versus capital budgets? Is continual Microsoft platform upgrades important to you? Are you currently invested in heavily in Microsoft products now? It'd be a good idea to think about if you were to stick with it, to go through and use Azure. Do you currently leverage Office 365? It integrates very nicely into the other Microsoft platforms. Let's talk about history as a guide. Will this be the Zoom platform? Will it be a mobile? Well, I don't think either one of these are, like Windows Mobile, I don't think either one of these are even remotely similar to this. Microsoft has done a fantastic job. They have not missed on any of their deliveries or any of their claims. I think this is going to be more along the lines of them displacing somebody like they did when they displaced Novell, displaced Sega in the gaming industry with Microsoft Xbox, and Internet Explorer dominating Netscape. I think that's where Microsoft is headed. So moving on to, if you're interested in an assessment, this is probably to see if Microsoft's the right for your company. You can send us an email and we can get back to you and schedule a free assessment of your environment to figure out if Azure is right for you. And Yaslin, I think we are ready for some questions and answers.
Okay, great. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, we have a question here. You mentioned Microsoft Migration Accelerator. How long does it take to move a server to Microsoft Azure?
Oh, interesting. That's a good question. Well, you need to install the Microsoft Migration Accelerator application, discover the servers you'd like to migrate, whether it be on-prem or in AWS or wherever, make sure that it meets the requirements, and then you pick your target and your destinations within a region or other options, and from there it's pretty much down to bandwidth and server size. How big is your server? How fast can you move it from point A to point B? So the question is, it depends. Let's say you got a really big bandwidth at your location, you have 200 megs of the internet, and you've got like a small server, say it's sitting at like I don't know, 50 or 60 gigs. It's going to move in this afternoon. It's going to make it into the cloud this afternoon. Anything larger than that and smaller bandwidth, it's going to depend. Sorry, I don't have an exact answer. I'm sure we can get you a calculator for it though. Okay.
Okay, thank you. And then there's another question here. It seems like Amazon has a huge lead infrastructure as a service. What is the likelihood that Microsoft will catch up?
Well, thanks for your question. Amazon's lead is pretty much predicated by its ability to take on all vendors. So they'll take over, and they say that they'll welcome anybody with open arms, any major OS. They have a strong lead in very mature tool sets, and specifically the chef recipes and in general just huge scalability. I do see a time in the near future when Red Hat and Microsoft will make and come to terms, and when that happens, that's going to put a big some more pressure on AWS because they don't have their own they don't have their own operating system platforms that they can design for themselves and actually tailor them to their own web services, AWS. So they don't have that as a thing right now. They have Red Hat and the ability to take on everybody. They need to find something. I mean, I think the Microsoft Migration Accelerator is going to be really affect market share in the long term because people that have spent time, because there's finite amounts of resources, you have so many resources you have locally that can go through and put together a platform locally or in AWS, and that's really complicated. It takes a lot of time to actually install. And instead of actually just building that again from scratch and then redoing that complicated install, it's way easier to migrate that as is into the platform. And I think that's how they're going to narrow the gap. They're going to narrow the gap by getting Red Hat on board, and they're going to continue to push their own platforms, all their suites of products, and they're vast, they're huge. They're going to tailor them to work seamlessly with Azure's and offer not as much seamless integration with AWS, primarily because they don't control AWS. So that's why I think Microsoft is going to gain market share, and Azure's will lose it. But I think they'll be at parity in a few years, maybe 2 years time frame. I think Azure's is going to parity. I'm so happy to be able to work on this, to actually do all the research. I know we've had a lot of interest in this platform, and as we've done this and done some deployments, and we've done a lot on AWS, I got to tell you that I think both of these platforms are fantastic. They're so far ahead of everybody else, and I'm so glad they're competing with each other because it makes each other better. But I think Amazon's lead is going to be getting fairly narrow in the future, primarily because they can control their own platform. They're going to get Red Hat, and they have that the ability to take away business from Azure, AWS. So that's my answer on that one.
Thanks, Michael. It looks like there are no other questions. So I want to thank you, Michael, and to all of our participants for joining us today. Please watch for a follow-up email with the replay link along with a copy of this presentation. And also, please take a moment to complete our brief exit survey. And on behalf of Michael and the Auxis team, we thank you again and enjoy the rest of your day.